My name is Maya Chen. I'm 42 years old, and 6 months ago, I discovered my husband of 20 years was not only cheating on me, he was financing his entire affair with my money. For 2 years, while I worked 60-hour weeks managing our family construction supply business, David was transferring thousands of dollars from our joint accounts into his personal account. He was buying his mistress designer handbags, while I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation. He was taking her to luxury hotels while telling me we couldn't afford a weekend trip. And when I finally discovered what he'd been doing, when I hired a forensic accountant and uncovered nearly $100,000 in diverted funds, David didn't apologize. He blamed me, said I'd driven him into another woman's arms by being too focused on work. Said the money was technically his because he'd earned it through the business. Then he served me with divorce papers, wanted to marry his mistress, wanted me out of his life as quickly as possible so he could start fresh. I signed those papers without a fight. Seemed like I was giving up, letting him win. But what David didn't know was that every single credit card he'd been using to plan his elaborate wedding, the venue deposit, the catering, the photographer, the honeymoon to Bali, was in my name, with him as an authorized user. And the moment the divorce was finalized, I canceled every single one. 15 credit cards, gone, just like that. 3 weeks later, David's wedding day arrived. While he was standing at the altar with his mistress, exchanging vows in a ceremony he couldn't actually afford, charge after charge began declining. The florist, the photographer, the reception venue demanding the remaining balance. And when he called me in a panic, begging me to reactivate the cards just for today, I told him exactly where he could find the money he owed me. Then I showed up at his reception, with my lawyer, with bank statements documenting every fraudulent transfer, with evidence of not just the affair, but the gambling debts, the forged signatures, the systematic theft of marital assets. In front of 300 wedding guests, including his business clients and both sets of parents, my lawyer read one text message from David to his mistress. That explained everything. This is the story of how my husband stole nearly $100,000 to finance a life with another woman, and how I made sure everyone knew exactly who they were marrying. David and I met when we were 22 years old, both working entry-level jobs in Seattle, both ambitious, driven, eager to build something. I was working as an administrative assistant at a law firm, making barely enough to cover rent and student loans. David was working construction, coming home every night covered in dust and exhausted. We met at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. I was studying for a business administration certification. He was reading blueprints for a project. Our eyes met over the counter when we both ordered the same thing, a large black coffee and a blueberry muffin. He smiled, asked if I wanted to share a table since the place was crowded. I said yes. We talked for 3 hours that first day about our dreams, our frustrations with dead-end jobs, our desire to build something meaningful. He told me about growing up watching his father struggle as a construction worker, never making enough money, never getting respect, how he wanted to be different, wanted to own his own business someday. I told him about my immigrant parents who'd sacrificed everything to give me opportunities, how I felt this pressure to succeed, to make their sacrifices worth something, how I wanted to prove I could build wealth, security, stability. We connected immediately, started dating within a week. Within a month, we were inseparable. Those early years were beautiful. We were broke but happy, would cook cheap meals together in my tiny apartment, would dream about the future while walking through neighborhoods we couldn't afford to live in, would plan our business ideas on napkins at diners at 2 a.m. David proposed on our 3rd anniversary. Nothing fancy, just him, me, and a ring he'd saved 6 months to buy. We got married at a community center with 50 guests, my parents, his parents, close friends. Simple ceremony, cheap reception. But it felt perfect. We started our life together in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't great, but was all we could afford. We shared one car, worked opposite shifts sometimes just to make ends meet. But we were building towards something, always moving forward. For the first 10 years of our marriage, we were genuinely a team. Every decision was made together. Every dollar was accounted for. Every sacrifice was shared. David worked his way up in construction management, started as a site supervisor, then project manager, then operations manager. He was good at his job. Clients liked him. Workers respected him. He had this easy charm that made people trust him. I worked in business administration, started as an assistant, became an office manager, then a business operations coordinator. I was good with numbers, with systems, with making things run efficiently. In our spare time, which wasn't much, we planned, researched, calculated. We wanted to start our own construction supply business, be our own bosses, build something that would last. It took us 5 years of saving every extra dollar, 5 years of saying no to vacations, to new cars, to anything that wasn't essential. 5 years of living well below our means while everyone around us spent freely. But we did it, saved enough for a down payment on a small warehouse, secured a business loan, found suppliers willing to work with a new company. Chen's Supply Company opened when I was 32 years old. It was tiny. One warehouse, basic inventory, just the two of us, and one part-time employee. But it was ours. I handled everything operational: bookkeeping, which I'd taught myself through online courses and books, vendor relationships, which took months to establish, inventory management, tracking every single item that came in and went out, customer service, answering phones, processing orders, solving problems. David handled sales and client acquisition. He'd go out to construction sites, talk to contractors, build relationships. He was the face of the company, while I was the engine that kept it running. We worked 7 days a week that first year. 16-hour days were normal. We'd wake up at 5 a.m., be at the warehouse by 6, work until midnight, go home, sleep a few hours, do it again. It was exhausting, stressful. There were moments I thought we'd made a terrible mistake, that we should have just kept our safe jobs with steady paychecks. But slowly, it started working. We got our first major contract 6 months in, then another, then another. Word spread that we were reliable, that our prices were fair, that we delivered on time. By year 3, we'd expanded to a second location. Revenue was approaching $2 million annually. We finally felt like we could breathe, could take a day off occasionally, could afford to buy a house. We found a place in the suburbs, nothing extravagant. 3 bedrooms, small yard, quiet neighborhood. But compared to where we'd come from, it felt like a mansion. I remember the day we got the keys. David carried me over the threshold, even though we'd been married for 12 years. We stood in the empty living room and just looked at each other. We'd done it. We'd built something real. Those were good years, years 13 through 15 of our marriage. The business was stable. We had financial security. We could actually enjoy the fruits of our labor. We started talking about maybe having kids. We'd always said we'd wait until we were financially stable. Now we were. Maybe it was time. But David kept finding reasons to delay. The business needed more attention. We should wait 1 more year. Let's get the 3rd location opened first. Then we'll try. I didn't push. I trusted him, trusted that we were on the same page, that when the time was right, we'd know. Looking back, I can see that's when things started changing. Subtle shifts I didn't recognize as warning signs. David started working late more often, would text me that he had a client dinner, wouldn't be home until 10 or 11. I believed him. Sales required relationship building. Client dinners were part of the job. He started being more protective of his phone, would take it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I walked into a room while he was texting, he'd quickly put it away. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say a client, a supplier, someone boring and work-related. He became more critical of me. Little comments about how I dressed, how I was always so focused on work, how I never wanted to go out anymore, how I'd become boring. I internalized those comments, started believing maybe I had become boring. Maybe I was too focused on work. Maybe I needed to try harder to be the wife he deserved. So I tried, bought new clothes even though we'd always been frugal, made reservations at nice restaurants, planned date nights. But David would cancel at the last minute. Client emergency, sight problem, some issue that only he could handle. I'd eat alone at the restaurant, go home alone, wonder what I was doing wrong. When I suggested couples counseling, David laughed, said we didn't need therapy, said I was overreacting, that all couples went through phases like this, that we just needed to get through this busy season at work and everything would be fine. I believed him, because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative, that something was fundamentally broken in our marriage, was too painful to consider. For 2 years, I ignored the signs, ignored the gut feeling that something was wrong, ignored the voice in my head that kept whispering that David was lying to me. And while I was ignoring all of that, convincing myself I was being paranoid and insecure, David was systematically stealing from me. March 7th. That's the day everything changed. The day I finally stopped ignoring my instincts and started paying attention. I was at the warehouse doing quarterly inventory. This was something I did 4 times a year, physically counting every item to reconcile against our computer system. It was tedious work that took days, but it was necessary to catch shrinkage, theft, or accounting errors. I was in the middle of counting fasteners, mind-numbing work that left plenty of room for thinking, when I decided to cross-reference the inventory expenses against our bank statements. Just routine verification, making sure everything matched. That's when I noticed something odd. A transfer of $15,000 to an account number I didn't recognize. It was marked as operating expenses, which was a category we used for everything from utility bills to equipment purchases. $15,000 was significant. Not enormous, but definitely something I should have known about, should have approved. We'd always had a policy that any expense over $5,000 required both of our signatures. I pulled up the authorization form in our digital filing system. There was my signature. Except I had absolutely no memory of signing this form, and the signature, while close, wasn't quite right. The loop on the Y in my last name was too big. The slant was slightly off. My heart started racing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd signed it and forgotten. Maybe I'd been distracted and signed it differently than usual. But I knew. Deep down, I knew this wasn't right. I pulled the previous 6 months of ledgers, started going through every transaction over $5,000, looking at every authorization form. Found another one. Same issue. My signature, but not quite right. Another $15,000 to the same unknown account. Then another, and another, and another. 5 transfers total, $15,000 each. All to the same account, all with signatures that looked like mine but weren't quite right, all marked as operating expenses. $75,000 gone. I sat in my office, the inventory count forgotten, staring at these documents. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. Who had access to these accounts? Who could forge my signature well enough to fool me at a glance? There was only one person, David, my husband, my partner, the person I'd built this entire business with, the person I'd trusted completely for 20 years. He'd stolen from me, systematically, methodically, over months. I wanted to scream, wanted to run to wherever he was and demand answers, wanted to throw these documents in his face and watch him try to explain. But something stopped me. Some instinct told me that if I confronted him now, without understanding the full picture, he'd find a way to explain it away, to make it seem reasonable, to make me doubt what I was seeing. I needed more information, needed to understand what he'd done with that money, where it had gone, why he'd taken it. So I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage, something that felt like a violation, but also felt necessary. I went through David's phone. That evening, David came home around 9, said he'd been at a client site dealing with a delivery issue, kissed me on the forehead, asked what was for dinner. I told him I'd already eaten, that I'd worked late at the warehouse and grabbed something on the way home, that I was tired and was going to bed early. He said fine. He'd watch some TV and come to bed later. I went to our bedroom, waited, heard the television turn on, heard David settle into the couch. Then I heard the shower start. David always showered before bed. It was his routine, 20 minutes minimum. I crept out of the bedroom, found his phone on the kitchen counter, plugged in and charging. He'd gotten sloppy, used to take it everywhere. Now he felt safe enough to leave it unattended. I knew his passcode. We'd always known each other's passcodes. No secrets, complete transparency, or so I'd thought. I unlocked his phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Opened his messages, scrolled past conversations with me, with clients, with suppliers. Found one labeled simply Sophia with a heart emoji. Opened it. The first message I saw made my stomach drop. A photo, explicit, of a woman I didn't recognize. I scrolled up. Days of messages, weeks, months, declarations of love, plans for their future together, discussions of when David would finally leave me, promises that it would be soon, that he just needed to secure his finances first. And then I found the messages about money. David sending photos of designer handbags. Which one do you like better, babe? The Gucci or the Louis Vuitton? Sophia responding, oh my God, the Gucci, but that's so expensive, are you sure? David, nothing's too expensive for you. You deserve the best. More photos, hotel reservations, the presidential suite at the Fairmont for our anniversary, baby. Can't wait. Links to luxury vacation packages. What do you think about Bali for our honeymoon? Honeymoon. While he was still married to me. I kept scrolling, found the text message that would become central to everything that followed. David, just transferred another $15K to my personal account. Maya didn't notice. She's so busy with inventory, she barely looks at the books anymore. Sophia, you're sure she won't find out? David, not a chance. I've been doing this for 2 years. She trusts me completely. By the time she figures it out, we'll be married and she'll have nothing. 2 years. He'd been stealing from me for 2 years. Not just cheating, not just having an affair, systematically robbing the business we'd built together, planning to leave me with nothing. And he'd been so confident about it, so certain I'd never notice, that I was too stupid, too trusting, too focused on work to pay attention. I read that message 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Each time, my stomach dropped further. Each time, the betrayal cut deeper. I scrolled through more messages, found dozens more references to money, to transfers, to gifts he'd bought her, to experiences they'd shared. A weekend at a luxury resort, $4,000. A diamond necklace, $8,000. First-class flights to Hawaii, $6,000. Dinner at exclusive restaurants I'd never been to, hundreds of dollars each time. All while he was telling me we needed to be more careful with money, that we couldn't afford to take vacations, that we should keep saving for the future. He wasn't saving, he was spending, just not on me. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every financial discussion, sent them all to my personal email, then went into his sent folder and deleted the messages to myself so he wouldn't know I'd been there. I put his phone back exactly where I'd found it, went back to the bedroom, climbed into bed, pulled the covers up. A few minutes later, I heard the shower turn off, heard David moving around, heard him come into the bedroom. "Everything okay?" he asked, seeing me lying there with my eyes open. "Fine," I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Just can't sleep, thinking about work stuff." "You work too hard," he said, climbing into bed next to me. "You need to learn to relax." He put his arm around me, kissed the back of my neck, told me he loved me. I lay there, rigid, feeling his arms around me, the same arms that had been around another woman, the same hands that had signed my name on fraudulent documents, the same voice that had told another woman he'd leave me with nothing. I wanted to vomit, wanted to scream, wanted to push him away and tell him never to touch me again. But I didn't. I lay there, quiet, still, pretending everything was normal, because I'd learned something important in that moment. Anger wasn't going to protect me. Emotion wasn't going to get my money back. Screaming and crying would only give David time to hide assets, destroy evidence, prepare his defenses. Cold, calculated strategy was the only answer. I had to be smarter than him, more patient, more thorough. I had to build a case so airtight that when I finally struck, he'd have no defense, no escape, no way to twist the narrative or make himself the victim. So I let him hold me, let him think everything was fine, let him think I was still the naive, trusting wife who didn't pay attention to the books, and I started planning. The next morning, I woke up before David, went to the warehouse early, sat in my office with the door closed, and made a phone call that would change everything. I didn't call a divorce lawyer. I called a forensic financial attorney. Her name was Patricia Reynolds. I'd found her through an internet search for lawyers specializing in asset recovery and financial fraud. Her website showed case after case of clients who'd had money stolen by spouses, business partners, family members, people who'd thought their assets were safe and discovered they'd been systematically robbed. She answered on the second ring. "Patricia Reynolds, my name is Maya Chen. I think my husband has been stealing from our business. I need help proving it." There was a pause. Then Patricia said, "Tell me everything." I spent the next hour explaining the transfers I'd found, the forged signatures, the text messages between David and his mistress, the 2 years of systematic theft. Patricia listened without interrupting. I could hear her typing occasionally, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said 5 words that changed everything. "He's going to prison, Maya." What? What your husband has done isn't just grounds for divorce, it's felony fraud. Forging signatures on financial documents is a crime. Systematically transferring marital assets without consent is embezzlement. Using business funds for personal gain is theft. If we pursue criminal charges, he could face 5 to 10 years in prison. I sat back in my chair, processing this. Prison. I'd called expecting help with a divorce, with asset recovery. I hadn't even considered criminal prosecution. But as the shock wore off, I realized something. David deserved to face criminal consequences. This wasn't just a marital betrayal. This was a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. "What do you want to do?" Patricia asked. "Because we have options. We can pursue this criminally, which means he faces jail time, but you might have difficulty recovering the full amount of assets. Criminal restitution is often less than civil judgments. Or we can use the threat of criminal charges as leverage to force full asset recovery and a favorable divorce settlement. Make him understand that if he doesn't cooperate, doesn't return every penny, we'll pursue prosecution." I thought about it, weighed the options, considered what would hurt David most. Prison would punish him, but I wanted more than punishment. I wanted my money back, every dollar. I wanted him to understand exactly what he'd done, wanted him humiliated, exposed, destroyed in every way that mattered. "I want my money back," I said finally, "every dollar he stole. And I want him to understand exactly what he did to me, to feel it, to face consequences in front of everyone who knows him." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in a tone that had a slight smile in it, "Then we're going to need more evidence. Everything you have is good, very good, actually, but I want to build an absolutely airtight case. I want every transfer traced to its final destination, every forged signature documented and verified by a handwriting expert, every credit card charge itemized and proven. When we confront him, when we present this to a judge if it comes to that, I want him to have absolutely no wiggle room. No way to claim it was a misunderstanding or a mistake. No way to avoid complete accountability." Over the next 4 weeks, Patricia assembled a team: a forensic accountant to trace every dollar, a handwriting expert to analyze the forged signatures, a private investigator to document David's activities. I gave them everything: access to all our business accounts, copies of every ledger, my personal emails, my personal phone records. I held nothing back. The forensic accountant was a woman named Jennifer Wu, mid-50s, quiet, meticulous. She spent 3 weeks going through every single transaction in our business accounts for the past 3 years. What she found was even worse than I'd thought. The $75,000 I'd discovered was just the beginning. There were smaller transfers I'd missed: $700 here, $1,500 there. Transfers small enough that they blended in with legitimate operating expenses. Jennifer traced everything, created a timeline, showed me exactly when each transfer happened and where the money went. The total was $92,000 over 23 months, nearly $100,000 stolen from the business we'd built together. But it gets worse, Jennifer told me during one of our meetings. Your husband has a gambling problem, a significant one. What? I traced the money from his personal account. $23,000 of it went to online poker sites, multiple sites. Sometimes he'd lose thousands in a single night. I stared at her. Gambling. David gambled. I'd had no idea. The rest went to expenses related to his mistress, Jennifer continued. I have itemized records. Hotel rooms averaging $600 each. Designer clothing and accessories totaling $42,000. Jewelry, including an engagement ring, purchased for $8,500. Fine dining, averaging $300 per meal, dozens of times. And a down payment on a luxury vacation package to Bali, $12,000. She slid a thick folder across the table. Everything's documented here: dates, amounts, purposes. I've also obtained his bank statements, which show the transfers in and the expenditures out. The chain of evidence is perfect. Patricia, who was sitting in on this meeting, smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of someone who knew she had an opponent beaten and was just waiting for the right moment to strike. This is excellent work, she said to Jennifer. With this, we have him on felony fraud, embezzlement, and potentially racketeering, given the systematic nature of the theft over time. She turned to me. Maya, with this evidence, we can destroy him legally. Criminal charges that will result in prison time. Civil charges that will result in full asset forfeiture. We can take everything. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. But instead, I just felt sick. $23,000 on gambling. Money we'd saved together. Money we'd worked so hard for, just thrown away on poker sites. $42,000 on clothes for another woman, while I wore the same outfits I'd owned for 5 years because we were supposed to be saving. An engagement ring, $8,500. He was planning to marry her, had bought her a ring worth more than the one he'd given me. How could I have been so blind? But I knew how, because I'd trusted him, because I'd believed we were partners, because when you love someone, you don't assume they're systematically robbing you. Patricia let me process for a moment. Then she said, "Here's what I recommend. We don't confront him yet. We let him continue thinking he's gotten away with it. Let him proceed with his plans to divorce you, to marry his mistress. Let him feel confident and secure." Why? Because the best time to strike is when your opponent is most vulnerable, most exposed. If we confront him now, he'll lawyer up. He'll hide assets. He'll prepare defenses. But if we wait, if we let him commit fully to his plans, then, when we strike, it'll be devastating, complete, indefensible. When would we strike? Ideally, his wedding day. Imagine, he's standing there with his mistress, celebrating what he thinks is his new beginning. All his friends and family there, business associates there, everyone important to him watching. And that's when we reveal everything. The theft, the fraud, the gambling, the systematic betrayal, in front of everyone who matters to him. Public humiliation combined with legal consequences. He'll be destroyed, personally, professionally, and legally, all at once. I thought about it. Imagined David standing at an altar, thinking he'd won, thinking he'd successfully stolen from me and gotten away with it, thinking he was about to start his new, perfect life. And then having it all collapse in the most public, humiliating way possible. "Yes," I said, "that's what I want." Patricia nodded. "Then we need to do one more thing. We need to identify what credit cards he's using to finance this wedding. If they're in your name, we can use that as additional leverage." I hadn't thought about credit cards, but Patricia was right. We'd opened numerous business credit cards over the years, all in my name because my credit score was better. David was an authorized user on all of them. I gave Patricia access to my credit card statements. She assigned Jennifer to analyze them. What Jennifer found was stunning. 15 credit cards, all in my name. David had been using them extensively for the past year. Total charges, $38,000. Hotel rooms, jewelry, designer clothes, flowers, photography deposits, venue deposits, catering deposits. He was planning an $80,000 wedding and financing it almost entirely with my credit. "This is perfect," Patricia said, "because those cards are in your name. You're the primary account holder. David is just an authorized user, which means you can cancel them at any time, without his permission, without warning. And if I canceled them, everything he's planned collapses. The venue requires final payment 2 weeks before the wedding. The photographer requires final payment 1 week before. The caterer requires payment on the day of. If the cards are canceled, all those charges decline. And since he's already used the cards for deposits, he'll owe thousands in cancellation fees." "When should I cancel them?" "The day your divorce is finalized. That way, he can't claim you're using the cards as leverage in the divorce. The divorce will be over, settled, and then you exercise your right as the primary cardholder to cancel cards you no longer want active." It was perfect, elegant, devastating. "I'm in," I said. Patricia smiled. "Then let's build the rest of the case and wait for him to make his next move." That next move came sooner than expected. 3 weeks after my first meeting with Patricia, David came home with papers. I knew what they were before he said anything, could see it in his face. The guilt he was trying to hide, the determination to get this over with. "Maya, we need to talk." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned our business strategy over cheap takeout, the same table where we'd celebrated our first major contract, the same table where I'd believed we were building a life together. "I want a divorce," David said. No preamble, no attempt to soften it, just cold, direct words. I made myself look surprised, hurt, confused. Why? "I've met someone else. I didn't plan for this to happen, but I'm in love with someone else. Her name is Sophia. I want to be with her." I watched him deliver this speech, watched him play the role of guilty husband, finally admitting his terrible truth. He'd probably practiced this, probably rehearsed it with Sophia. "How long?" I asked, making my voice small, vulnerable. 2 years. 2 years. I let that hang in the air, let him see the pain on my face, pain that wasn't fake, even though I already knew. "You've been cheating on me for 2 years and you're just now telling me?" "I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. Didn't want to hurt me, while stealing nearly $100,000, while planning a new life with stolen money, while buying another woman an engagement ring. What about the business?" I asked. "We'll split it 50-50. That's fair. You keep your half, I keep mine. We sell the house, divide the proceeds equally. This doesn't have to be complicated, Maya. We can do this amicably." Amicably, as if there was anything amicable about what he'd done. Everything in me wanted to scream, wanted to pull out the evidence right then and throw it in his face, wanted to watch him try to explain the $92,000, the gambling, the forged signatures. but Patricia's voice echoed in my head. Let him think he's winning. Let him feel confident. That's when we strike. So I nodded slowly. Okay, if that's what you want. David looked shocked, genuinely shocked. Really? You're not going to fight this? What's the point? I said, making my voice sound defeated. If you don't want to be married anymore, I'm not going to force you. I just want this to be fair. It will be, David said quickly. I promise. I'll make sure you're taken care of. We built this business together. You'll get your fair share of everything. Lies. All lies. Because he didn't consider the $92,000 he'd stolen to be part of what I should get. I have a lawyer, David continued. He's drawn up preliminary divorce papers. The terms are what I said. 50-50 split of business assets, house sold and proceeds divided equally. No alimony since we both work and earn similar amounts. Simple, fair, clean. Can I have my own lawyer look at them? Of course, absolutely. I want you to feel comfortable with everything. He slid the papers across the table. I picked them up, pretended to read them carefully. They were exactly what he'd described. Standard, uncontested divorce terms. I'll have my lawyer review these, I said. Take your time, David said. There's no rush. But there was a rush. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted this done, wanted to be free to marry Sophia without the complication of still being married to me. That night, I sent the divorce papers to Patricia. She called me the next morning. The terms are actually fair, she said, if he hadn't stolen $92,000, but since he has, this settlement leaves you significantly short of what you're owed. Should I fight it? Try to negotiate? No. Sign it. Get the divorce finalized quickly and cleanly. Then we pursue the fraud charges separately. This way, he can't claim you're using fraud allegations to gain leverage in the divorce. The divorce will be a separate, completed matter. The fraud will be criminal and civil charges based on evidence, not marital disputes. Won't that let him think he got away with it? Exactly. That's precisely what we want him to think. The more confident he feels, the more exposed he'll be when we strike. I signed the divorce papers 2 days later, met with David and our lawyers at a mediator's office, sat across from my husband of 20 years, and signed away our marriage. David looked relieved, grateful even. He probably thought I was being reasonable, mature, taking the high road. He had no idea what was coming. The divorce was finalized on May 22nd. 20 years of marriage dissolved in 15 minutes of paperwork. That afternoon, I did one thing, one simple action that would begin the unraveling of everything David had planned. I called every single credit card company, 15 of them, went through my files and methodically canceled every card. The conversations were almost identical. This is Maya Chen, primary account holder for card ending in number. I need to cancel this card effective immediately. Is there a problem with the card, Ms. Chen? No, I'm recently divorced and I no longer want my ex-spouse to have access to credit in my name. I understand. I'll process that cancellation right away. The card will be deactivated within the hour. Thank you. 15 calls, 15 cancellations, 1 hour of my time. David was an authorized user on all of them, not the primary account holder, which meant he had no say in whether the card stayed active, no way to override my decision, no recourse. Every card he'd been using to plan his wedding was gone. The Visa he'd used for the venue deposit, the MasterCard he'd used for the photographer, the American Express he'd used for catering, all of them, deactivated. And because they were canceled, not just suspended, he couldn't reactivate them, couldn't call the credit card companies and claim there'd been a mistake. The primary account holder had made a decision, and that was final. I hung up after the last call and sat in my office, imagining the moment David would discover what I'd done. When he'd try to use a card and it would decline. When he'd call the credit card company and be told the account was closed at the primary holder's request. The panic, the realization, the understanding that his perfect plans were falling apart. I allowed myself a small smile. This was just the beginning. David's wedding was planned for June 18th. I knew this from the messages I'd seen on his phone. I also knew it because my forensic accountant had contacted the venue, the Bellingham estate, under the pretext of verifying a charge. The venue had been very forthcoming with information. Told Jennifer that Mr. Chen had booked their largest ballroom, 300 guests. Premium package including ceremony, cocktail hour, reception, full bar, and late-night snacks. Total cost, $80,000. They'd received a deposit of $8,000, paid on one of my credit cards before I canceled it. The remaining $72,000 was due 2 weeks before the wedding, per their contract. Jennifer asked what would happen if the payment didn't come through. The venue manager explained their policy. If final payment wasn't received 2 weeks before the event, the reservation would be canceled. The deposit would be forfeited. Any additional deposits paid to vendors through the venue would be refunded to those vendors, not to the client. What Jennifer did next was brilliant. She explained that Mr. Chen might be using fraudulent credit to finance this wedding, that there was an ongoing investigation into identity theft and credit fraud, that the venue might want to protect themselves by requiring payment in full, in cash or certified check, rather than accepting credit cards. The venue manager, concerned about liability, agreed, updated their records to show that David Chen's final payment had to be made via certified check or wire transfer, no credit cards accepted. Then Jennifer notified me. I need you to authorize one more thing. I want to contact his bank and freeze his accounts based on the ongoing fraud investigation. Can you do that? With the evidence we have and a court order, yes. Patricia can petition for an emergency asset freeze based on the suspected embezzlement. It'll take a few days to process, but if we time it right, we can freeze his accounts right before the wedding payment is due. Do it. Patricia filed the motion. The judge, reviewing the evidence of forged signatures and systematic asset transfers, granted it. David's personal and business accounts were frozen pending investigation into possible fraud. Everything was falling into place. 2 weeks before the wedding, David must have received the call from the venue. The call explaining that they needed $72,000 in certified check or wire transfer. No credit cards accepted. I know because that's when he started calling me. The first call came on June 4th. I was at the warehouse going over inventory reports when my phone rang. David's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Maya, something's wrong with the credit cards. They're all saying they're canceled. Did you do something? I kept my voice calm. Yes, I canceled them. They were in my name. Why would I keep paying for your expenses after our divorce? There was a pause. Then David said, in a voice trying to sound reasonable, Maya, I need those cards. I have things I need to pay for. What things? Just expenses, things I've already committed to. Like your wedding? Silence. He realized he'd walked into a trap. David, those are my credit cards. They're in my name. I'm the primary account holder. I'm not financing your new life. You're on your own now. Maya, please. His voice shifted, became pleading. Just reactivate them for 1 more month. 1 month. Then you can cancel them again. I'll pay you back for any charges, I promise. No. Maya, I'm begging you. This is important. Your wedding to the woman you cheated on me with for 2 years is not my problem. Figure it out yourself. Maya, don't do this. Don't be petty. Petty? You stole from me, cheated on me, and planned to leave me with nothing. And I'm the one being petty? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I hung up. He called back immediately. I didn't answer. He called 6 more times. I ignored all of them. Then the texts started. Please, Maya, I'm begging you. This is important. You're being cruel. This is vindictive. Fine. I don't need you. I'll find another way. But he didn't find another way, because he didn't have $80,000 in accessible cash. His business accounts were frozen. His personal accounts were frozen. All his available credit was in my name, and I'd canceled it. He was stuck. On June 10th, Sophia called me. I was honestly surprised. We'd never spoken. I didn't even know she had my number. Is this Maya? Yes. Who's this? Sophia, David's fiancé. We need to talk." "I don't think we do. You're ruining our wedding. You canceled the credit cards out of spite. That's petty and vindictive, and I need you to stop." I almost laughed. This woman, who'd been sleeping with my husband for 2 years, who'd received tens of thousands of dollars in stolen money, who'd been planning to marry a man who was systematically robbing his wife, was calling me petty. "The credit cards were in my name," I said calmly. "I canceled them because I'm not financing your relationship anymore. That's not petty. That's protecting my financial interests. David said he earned that money, that you didn't deserve it because you were so focused on work that you ignored him." "Did David mention he stole $92,000 from our business? That he forged my signature 23 times? That he used marital assets to buy you gifts while telling me we couldn't afford basic expenses?" There was a pause. "That's not true." "Yes, it is. I have bank statements, court documents, forensic accounting reports. Would you like me to email them to you? I'll send you the whole file. You can see exactly where every dollar you spent came from." "You're lying. You're just bitter and trying to ruin things for us." "I'm not the one who ruined things. David is. He committed fraud. Multiple felonies, and you were the beneficiary of those crimes. Technically, you could be charged as an accessory. Did you know that? That receiving gifts purchased with stolen money can make you criminally liable?" Silence. Then Sophia's voice, much smaller now. "I didn't know." "Well, now you do." She hung up. I sat there for a moment, phone in my hand, thinking about Sophia. Was she completely innocent? Had David lied to her too? Made her think he was wealthy and successful, when really he was just a thief? Or had she known? Had she known he was married, known he was stealing, and just not cared as long as she got her designer handbags and luxury vacations? I decided it didn't matter. Whatever Sophia's level of culpability, she was about to find out exactly who David really was. June 18th arrived, David's wedding day. Patricia had advised me not to attend. Let the legal system handle everything. Let the venue cancel the event when payment didn't arrive. Let David and Sophia deal with the humiliation privately. But I couldn't do that. I needed to see it. Needed to watch David face the consequences of his choices in real time. So I drove to the Bellingham estate, arrived at 4 p.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 5. I parked in the lot and walked toward the main building. The venue was beautiful. Rolling lawns, elegant architecture, views of Puget Sound. The kind of place I'd dreamed about getting married when I was young. The kind of place David and I could never afford for our actual wedding. But David could afford it for Sophia, with my money. I didn't go inside, stayed in the parking lot watching through the large windows of the main ballroom. The scene was chaos. The florist was there, arguing with someone in a staff uniform. Half the flowers hadn't been delivered because the deposit check had bounced. The remaining flowers were sitting in boxes, undecorated, because the florist refused to set them up without full payment. The photographer was packing up his equipment. I watched him talk to a woman who must have been the wedding planner. Saw him gesture emphatically, saw her try to placate him, saw him shake his head and continue packing. "I don't work without payment," I imagined him saying. The contract was clear. The catering truck was there, but the food was still in the truck. The catering manager was standing with security guards, ensuring their food didn't get unloaded without payment. Guests started arriving around 4:30, dressed in formal wear, carrying gifts, looking confused about why nothing seemed ready. The ceremony area, which should have had flower arrangements and seating and decorative elements, was bare. A few chairs had been set up, but no flowers, no archway, no altar. The reception tables were empty. No linens, no centerpieces, no place settings. This wasn't a wedding. This was a disaster. I saw David through the window. He was in the corner, phone pressed to his ear, face red, probably screaming at his bank, trying to understand why his accounts were frozen, trying to arrange an emergency loan that would never come through in time. I saw Sophia. She was in a beautiful white dress, strapless, lace details, probably cost thousands of dollars. Another charge on my credit cards that had somehow gone through before I canceled everything. She was crying, mascara running down her face, talking to her parents who looked furious. They probably traveled for this, told all their friends their daughter was marrying a successful businessman. Were expecting an elegant wedding at a luxury venue. Instead, they were getting nothing. I watched for another 30 minutes, watched more guests arrive and then leave when they realized nothing was happening. Watched vendors pack up and drive away. Watched the venue manager talk to David and Sophia, probably explaining that without payment, they needed to vacate the premises. Then David saw me. I was standing near my car, not hiding, but not announcing my presence either, just watching. Our eyes met through the window. His face went from red with anger to white with shock. He stormed outside. "What are you doing here?" "Watching," I said calmly. "Watching what?" "You deal with the consequences of your choices." "You did this!" David was screaming now. Guests inside were looking. "You sabotaged everything. You canceled the cards on purpose to ruin my wedding." "I canceled cards that were in my name," I said evenly. "What you chose to do with those cards, fraudulently, without my knowledge or consent, isn't my problem." "Maya, please." His voice shifted again, desperate, pleading. "I'm begging you, help me fix this. Just for today. I'll pay you back everything. I swear. Just help me get through today." "You don't have $92,000 to pay me back, David." His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the transfers, the forged signatures, the gambling, all of it." You've known?" "For 3 months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice $92,000 disappearing from our business accounts?" David's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "I hired a forensic accountant," I continued, "a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. We've traced every dollar you stole. Every forged signature has been verified by a handwriting expert. Every fraudulent charge has been documented. And we've filed criminal complaints with the district attorney's office. Fraud, embezzlement, forgery, identity theft. You're looking at multiple felony charges, David." "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, showed him a PDF of the criminal complaint. "That's the official filing with the district attorney. They're reviewing it now. Should have a decision within 2 weeks on whether to prosecute. But between you and me, with the evidence we have, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when." David grabbed my phone, hands shaking.